Iranian officials have firmly denied reports of resumed nuclear negotiations with the United States, dismissing them as Western propaganda aimed at destabilizing Tehran's position in the region. Foreign Ministry spokesman Nazar Kanani stated that Iran has no intention of restarting talks under current conditions, referring to ongoing U.S. sanctions and what he called hostile American policies. This comes despite behind-the-scenes efforts by Secretary of State Marco Rubio to explore the diplomatic channel through Omni intermediaries. Analysts suggest the hardline stance reflect internal divisions within Iran's leadership, with Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei reportedly rejecting any concessions to the Trump administration. The breakdown in communication marks a sharp reversal from earlier this year, when European diplomats hinted at possible indirect talks. A senior U.S. State Department officials, speaking on conditions of anonymity, confirmed that Rubio had authorized a back-channel outreach in June, but Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps (IRGC) vetoed further engagement. Instead, Tehran has accelerated its uranium enrichment activities, with the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) reporting that Iran now possesses enough 60% enriched uranium for 3 nuclear weapons if further processed. The White House has remained publicly silent, though Pentagon officials have reportedly presented President Trump with updated military contingency plans. Regional tensions have escalated further following Iran's deployment of advanced air defense systems along its border with Iraq, where the U.S. force maintain a presence. The IRGC Navy has also increased harassment of commercial shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, with 3 incidents recorded in the past week alone. Meanwhile, Iran-backed militias in Syria and Iraq continue low-level attacks on American bases, though none have resulted in fatalities since the January drone strike that killed 4 U.S. contractors. Defense Secretary Peter Hegseth has ordered the USS Gerald Ford carrier strike group to remain stationed in the eastern Mediterranean rather than returning home, signaling continued U.S. military pressure. Economic pressure on Iran appeared to be reaching a breaking point, with the rial losing 40% of its value against the dollar since March. Popular protests over food shortage and inflation have erupted in multiple cities. Though state security forces have quickly suppressed them, the Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign, reinvigorated under Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, has effectively blocked Iran's oil exports to all but a handful of Chinese buyers. However, Russia has begun supplying Iran with advanced missile components in exchange for drones, creating a new axis of cooperations that complicated Western containment efforts. Energy analysts warn that another major spike in oil prices could occur if the Strait of Hormuz were blocked, with global markets already nervous over the stalled Ukraine war. The diplomatic stalemate leaves few viable off-ramps for either side. While President Trump has previously expressed willingness to meet directly with Iranian leaders, his administration's insistence on maintaining sanctions until Tehran abandons all nuclear enrichment has been met with equal intransigence from Khamenei. With midterm U.S. election approaching and Iran's own leadership succession looming, neither government appears positioned to make concessions. The IAEA is scheduled to hold an emergency session next week, where Director General Rafael Grossi may declare Iran in non-compliance with nuclear safeguards, a move that could trigger snapback sanctions at the UN Security Council. As military posturing intensifies on both sides, the risk of miscalculation grows daily along this volatile flashpoint. Israeli forces conducted precision strikes on at least 5 high-value Iranian targets overnight, including a previously undiscovered underground nuclear facility near Natanz and a missile production complex in Isfahan. According to satellite imagery analyzed by Western intelligence agencies, the attack marked Israel's most aggressive operation against Iran since the 2024 destruction of the Fordo enrichment plant and represent a deliberate escalation amid stalled diplomacy. Iranian state media acknowledge only minor industrial accident, but U.S. intelligence intercept revealed panic communication between Revolutionary Guard commander about the loss of critical uranium, centrifuge, and solid fuel missile components. The strike employed a new generation of Israeli stealth drone capable of penetrating Iranian air defense, combined with cyber attacks that disable early warning systems minutes before impact. Unlike high-profile operations like the 2020 assassination of nuclear scientist Mohsen Farizadeh, this multi-wave attack avoids human casualties to minimize escalation risk. Defense experts note the strikes deliberately spared Iran's known nuclear sites at Fordo and Bushehr, suggesting Israel seeks to degrade rather than provoke Iran's capabilities. The targeted Isfahan facility was producing missiles with 2,000-kilometer range, putting U.S. bases in Qatar and Saudi Arabia at risk. The Trump administration's offered tacit approval through carefully worded State Department statements emphasizing all nations' right to self-defense, while Secretary of State Marco Rubio privately assured Israeli PM Netanyahu of continued intelligence sharing. European powers reacted with sharper criticism, with France's Foreign Ministry calling the strikes a dangerous violation of international law. Russia and China jointly condemned the attack at an emergency UN Security Council sessions, with Moscow threatening to accelerate S-400 missile defense deliveries to Tehran. Iran's response has been notably restrained thus far, limited to symbolic missile tests near U.S. base in Syria and cyber attack on Israeli hospital. This muted reaction suggests Tehran's leadership is divided on retaliation timing, with hardliners demanding immediate action and pragmatists urging cautions until nuclear breakout capacity is restored. Oil markets reacted violently nonetheless, with Brent crude spiking 8% on fears of Hamas Strait closures. The Pentagon has placed all regional bases on force protection condition Delta, recalling the 10th day preceding the 2020 Soleimani strike. The attacks expose how Israel's war between wars strategy has evolved since 2022. Rather than relying on Mossad assassinations and isolated airstrikes, the new approach combines AI targeting systems that identify critical supply chain choke points, swarm drone tactics, overwhelming air defense, AI-generated disinformation confusing Iranian response efforts. Satellite photos show the Natanz site hidden entrance, camouflaged as a water treatment plant, was struck by a bunker-busting munition that left a 40-meter crater. This demonstrated unprecedented Israeli intelligence penetration of Iran's nuclear program. Concurrently, hackers disabled Iranian state TV broadcasts for 47 minutes, replacing them with footage of protests in Mashhad, a psychological warfare tactic meant to amplify domestic unrest. The strike coincided with Israel's deployment of 3 new Iron Dome batteries near the Golan Heights, suggesting anticipation of Hezbollah rocket barrage. U.S. Defense Secretary Peter Hegseth has delayed a planned reduction of American troops in Syria, keeping 900 Special Forces operators near Deir ez-Zor oil field. With Iran's nuclear timeline set back by an estimated 18 months, but its regional proxy network intact, the stage is set for a prolonged covert conflict increasingly difficult to contain. The Trump administration appears increasingly constrained in its Russia policy as the Ukraine conflict enters its 41st month with no viable diplomatic off-ramps. Secretary of State Marco Rubio's proposed freeze for sanctions relief plan, which would have paused fighting along current lines in exchange for partial economic concessions, was flatly rejected by both Moscow and Kyiv last week. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov reiterated that territorial realities must be recognized, referring to Russia's claimed annexation of 4 Ukrainian oblasts, while Ukrainian President Zelensky called the proposal a shortcut to betrayal during his nightly address. This diplomatic deadlock leaves President Trump with a narrowing menu of unappealing options. Escalatory measure approving Ukrainian strikes deep inside Russia with U.S. weapons. Disengagement, reducing aid to force Kyiv to negotiate. Status quo, prolonging a grinding attritional war. Defense Secretary Peter Hegseth has reportedly advocated for lifting restriction on Ukraine's uses of ATACMS missiles against Russian energy infrastructure, while National Security Advisor John Ratcliffe warned this could provoke direct NATO-Russia clash. The Pentagon's latest assessment suggests Russia has reconstituted 85% of its pre-war military capacity despite sanctions, with defense plants producing 2 million artillery shells annually, triple Ukraine's Western supplied output. Treasury Secretary Scott Benson's maximum pressure 2.0 sanctions regime shows diminishing returns. While Russia's GDP remained 20% below pre-war levels, it has stabilized through shadow fleet oil sales to India, China at $68 a barrel, military-civil fusion, converting consumer factories to arm production, sanctions evasion hubs in Armenia, Kazakhstan handling $12 billion a month in dual-use tech imports. The recent Russia-North Korea defense pact has further undermined containment efforts, with satellite imagery showing weekly arms shipments from Rajin to Vladivostok. European unity is fracturing as Hungary's Viktor Orban blocks EU aid package and Germany AfD party gains polling traction with anti-war messaging. On the battlefield, Russian forces have adopted a meat grinder plus strategy. Human wave attacks leveraging 35,000 monthly convict recruits. Tactical nuclear posturing. Iskander missiles move to Belarus. Ukraine's much anticipated summer counteroffensive had yielded only marginal gains around Bakhmut, losing 45 Western provided Bradley in 3 weeks. The new U.S. provided F-16 slated for August deployment may temporarily regain air parity, but cannot offset Russia's 5-1 artillery advantage. With Trump ruling out U.S. troops deployment and Putin's betting on Western fatigue, the conflict appears headed toward a frozen line of contact with 18% of Ukraine's territory occupied indefinitely. New NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte has shocked alliance members with confidential assessment predicting a potential two-front war scenario against both Russia and China within the next 18 months. Leaked document from NATO Supreme Headquarters Allied Powered Europe SHAPE revealed extensive wargaming exercise conducted last month that simulate near simultaneous Russian attacks in Eastern Europe and Chinese moves against Taiwan. The simulations reportedly ended with NATO forces stretched dangerously thin, unable to defend all alliance territories effectively. The wargame assumed 3 escalation phases. Russian hybrid warfare in the Baltic combined with Chinese cyber attack on U.S. Pacific base. Conventional Russian invasion of Moldova while China blockades Taiwan. Full-scale combat operation across European and Asian theaters. Defense analysts note these scenarios reflect growing military cooperation between Moscow and Beijing, evidenced by last month's joint naval exercise in the Mediterranean involving 40 Russian and Chinese warships. Secretary-General Rutte has urgently called for increasing NATO defense spending to 3% of GDP across all member states, with particular emphasis on expanding ammunition stockpiles from 30 days to 90 days reserves, accelerating deployment of next-generation air defense systems, establishing rapid response divisions specifically trained for dual-front contingency, alliance division surface over China's strategy. The assessment has exposed sharp disagreement within NATO. Eastern European members demand immediate reinforcement of Russia-facing positions. Southern European states prioritize Mediterranean security against migrant flows. Western members remain divided on Taiwan contingency planning. U.S. Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth has reportedly pressed NATO to adopt pre-decision protocols that would automatically trigger Article 5 response for certain scenarios, reducing political delays during crisis. However, France and Germany have resisted, fearing this could lead to uncontrolled escalation. The debate comes as China completes constructions of its third overseas military base in Cuba, dramatically shortening warning times for potential strikes on U.S. territory. The wargame identified several critical vulnerabilities. Logistic bottleneck. European ports and rail networks cannot handle simultaneous reinforcement to eastern and southern flanks. Munitions shortage. Current artillery shell production meets only 60% of projected two-front demand. Electronic warfare deficits. NATO systems struggle against combined Russian-Chinese jamming capabilities. Perhaps most alarmingly, the simulation suggested NATO's nuclear deterrent may be losing credibility due to Russia's developments of exotic new delivery systems like nuclear-armed torpedo drones and China's rapid expansion of its ICBM fleet. In response, the U.S. has begun forward deploying B-6112 tactical nuclear weapons to additional European bases, while UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has ordered the Royal Navy to maintain continuous at-sea nuclear deterrent patrols with 2 submarines instead of 1. The Middle East stands on the brink of regional war as Israel and Iran exchange direct military strikes for the first time since the 2024 nuclear facility attacks. Earlier today, Iranian forces launched a barrage of 35 ballistic missiles at Israeli military installation in the Golan Heights and Negev Desert, marking Tehran's first overt military action against Israel rather than operating through proxy groups. Israeli defense system intercepted 28 missiles, but 7 struck their targets, causing significant damage to an airbase and intelligence facility. Casualty reports remain unclear, with Israeli officials confirming at least 12 military personnel wounded. Israel responded within hours with devastating precision strikes targeting Iran's Isfahan uranium conversion facility, Revolutionary Guard headquarters in Tehran, key oil terminals on Karg Island. The strikes employed a combination of stealth F-35 fighters and long-range missiles launched from Israeli submarines in the Persian Gulf. Unlike previous covert operations, both sides have publicly claimed responsibility for these attacks, representing a dangerous shift toward overt state-on-state conflicts. Iranian state television showed Supreme Leader Khamenei meeting with military commanders, vowing the Zionist regime will regret its aggression tenfold. The direct military exchange triggered immediate financial turmoil. Brent crude oil surged 14% to $142 per barrel. Tel Aviv Stock Exchange suspended trading after 8% plunge. Global shipping companies began rerouting vessels from Persian Gulf. The U.S. State Department issued emergency travel warning for all American citizens in Israel, Lebanon, and the Gulf state. Secretary of State Marco Rubio held urgent calls with counterparts in Saudi Arabia, UAE, and Jordan to coordinate responses. Pentagon officials confirmed the USS Gerald Ford carrier group has been repositioned to the eastern Mediterranean, while B-52 bombers were dispatched to Qatar Al Udeid Air Base. This escalation follows months of intensifying shadow warfare. Cyberfront, Israel attacks disabled Iranian oil export systems last week. Nuclear program, IAEA confirmed Iran has begun enriching uranium to 67%. Regional proxies, Hezbollah fired 180 rockets into northern Israel yesterday. Analysts note 3 dangerous new factors. Russian involvement, satellite image shows S-400 system in Syria active during the attack. U.S. posture, Trump administration yet to issue full-throated support for Israel. Chinese mediation, Beijing unexpectedly offered to host emergency talks. The conflict now risks drawing in global powers, with Russia backing Iran and the U.S. treaty-bound to defend Israel. European leaders have called for an immediate UN Security Council meeting, though Russia holds veto power over any proposed resolutions. As night falls across the Middle East, all regional militaries remain at maximum alert, with the potential for miscalculations or accidental escalation growing by the hour. A high-profile British missile attacks on Russia's strategic Kerch Bridge connecting Crimea to mainland Russia ended in embarrassing failure today, with all 6 launched Storm Shadow cruise missiles either intercepted or malfunctioning before reaching their target. The attempted strike, authorized by Prime Minister Keir Starmer after months of deliberation, marked the UK's most direct military action against Russian infrastructure since the Ukraine war began. Satellite imagery show Russian S-400 and Pantsir air defense systems successfully engaged 5 missiles over the Black Sea, while the 6th reportedly veered off course due to electronic warfare interference and crashed harmlessly in a field near Kerch. The failed mission reveals critical weakness in Western capabilities. Electronic warfare deficit, Russian jamming systems effectively blinded missile guidance, air defense penetrations, even stealth-enhanced storm shadows couldn't overcome layered defenses. Operational security, Russia appeared to have advance warning of the attack. Russian President Putin immediately declared the defense of the bridge an absolute success, while Defense Minister Belousov boasted that not a single scratch was sustained. The bridge remains fully operational, continuing to transport military supplies to Russian forces in southern Ukraine. In Kyiv, the failed strike has deepened frustration with Western allies, with one Ukrainian general privately calling it a $30 million fireworks show that only made Putin stronger. strategic consequences unfold. The botched operation carries significant geopolitical ramifications. UK credibility damage raises question about Britain's much-touted force projection capabilities. Russian morale boost. State media is celebrating the intercept as a technological triumph. Ukrainian disappointment. Zelensky's government had lobbied intensely for the bridge strike. NATO dilemma exposes alliance continued reluctance to commit its own force. U.S. Secretary of Defense Peter Hegseth pointedly avoided commenting on the UK operation during today's Pentagon briefing, though intelligence sources confirmed Washington had advised against the timing of the attack. The failure comes at a particularly sensitive moment, just as the Trump administration considers approving longer-range ATACMS missiles transfers to Ukraine. Russian propagandists have already begun mocking the Storm Shadow flop across social media, with the Defense Ministry releasing infrared footage of the intercepts set to patriotic music. Military expert identified 3 key failure points. Predictable approach vectors. All missiles came from the same western direction. Outdated countermeasure failed to adapt to Russia's upgrade EW systems. Insufficient saturation. 6 missiles couldn't overwhelm the bridge defense. The UK Ministry of Defense maintained the operation successfully, tested Russian defenses, and gathered valuable intelligence, but retired generals are calling it a wake-up call for NATO. This proved we have underestimated Russian capabilities for 3 straight years, said former British Army Commander General Sir Richard Barons. Our precision strike doctrine needs complete revision. As cleanup crew work along the Black Sea coast collecting missile debris, the larger strategic picture grows clearer. Russia retains formidable defense capabilities that could complicate any future Western intervention, whether in Ukraine or elsewhere. The Kerch Bridge stands today not just as a physical link between Russia and Crimea, but as a potent symbol of Moscow's enduring military resilience despite years of Western sanctions and arms shipment to Ukraine. Many of my listeners, like 70%, haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel. And so many of you don't even know that you haven't subscribed. And that is actually what makes the show going. It's almost like you're making a donation to the show. So that's why I ask again and again, because it enables us to grow and grow and grow. And we're going for the long haul here. And listen, if this is your first time listening to Sok Hain Rich, you don't have to subscribe. You guys, your first one's on me. But if you have watched the show before, it's like you are a freeloader now. So all I would ask you is, if you have seen this show before and you like it, help me, help my team here. Hit the subscribe button and we will continue to build this show for you. That I swear. Thank you to all of you guys who have subscribed. It means a lot to me. Now, hit that subscribe and like button now. Thank you. That's all for me for today. I will see you soon. Bye for now.